Coming up on Fox 4 Sports Watch, we talk about Jordan Spieth's victory at the U.S. Open. Is it more impressive than what he did at Augusta National? We'll also talk about his achievements thus far in his young career, and if it's just as good, perhaps better, than what Tiger Woods has taken care of. And plus, we'll talk a little future Jordan Spieth and see if he's able to complete the third leg of the Grand Slam. Fox 4 Sports Watch, it's all about Jordan Spieth, and it's coming up next.
You're listening to Fox 4 Sports with Edward Egros and Victor Wynn.
Welcome to another installment of Fox 4 Sports Watch. I am Edward Egros, your neighborhood weekend sportscaster. We will be joined by Victor Wynn, your neighborhood sports producer, in just a bit. But first, Jordan Spieth, my goodness, another major championship for the 21-year-old Dallas Jesuit product. This one was much more of a nail-biter than the Masters when he pretty much lapped the field and had one of the lowest scores that the course had ever seen. What's interesting about what he's done so far, it's disingenuous to say that Dustin Johnson lost the tournament or that other guys lost the tournament. Jordan Spieth won the U.S. Open because of his putting, because of his scrambling, and his ability to fight through a lot of challenges and adversity. He has done some incredible things already. 2 major championships before the age of 22, and only a few other golfers have ever won the Masters and the U.S. Open in the same year. And you look at that list, my goodness, you were talking about some of the great names in all of golf, including Tiger Woods, Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer. My goodness, what an impressive performance that he was able to put off. And now we can look ahead to the third leg of the Grand Slam, the British Open at St. Andrews. A lot to talk about concerning what Jordan Spieth has done and what he can do. So to get going on that, I spoke to PGAtour.com and XM Sirius Satellite Radio's Fred Albers about Jordan Spieth's accomplishments.
Okay, Fred, first of all, you were covering the U.S. Open this week, and you watched Jordan Spieth come through with another major championship. What was more impressive in your mind? The way he was able to lap the field at the Masters, or the way he was able to grind out a victory at Chambers Bay with so many variables and so many other guys gunning for him?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt, his victory in the U.S. Open was more impressive. Jordan had his good stuff the week at Augusta. His ball striking wasn't nearly as crisp at Chambers Bay, and yet he still found a way to eke out a win when he wasn't playing his very best. By far, the U.S. Open victory was more impressive.
Of course, the Tiger comparisons are obvious given what he's able to accomplish so far, but I think there's some things concerning Spieth's game that might be even better than Tiger's in his heyday. What do you think about that?
Got to disagree there. Tiger in his heyday was the best player in the world. In his 2000 season was, just did everything better than everyone else. He was the best putter. He was the best chipper. He was the best bunker player. He was the longest driver. He was the best iron player. Jordan does something that's really good. Jordan has found the ability to score, which is, the essential part of the game. Bobby Jones said the secret to golf has been and always will be finding a way to turn 5 into 4. And at a very young age, Jordan Spieth has discovered that. But if you look at all of Jordan's metrics on the PGA Tour, nothing really pops out at you. At the same point, nothing is that bad. Whereas Tiger Woods, you may say, even in his prime, he didn't hit a lot of fairways. But Jordan has found a way to get the ball into the cup. That's really impressive and served him well at Chambers Bay. But Tiger at his best is a better player than Jordan at his best. Of course, Jordan's story is a story in progress. So maybe that changes. But as of right now, at this moment, the best of Tiger is better than the best of Jordan.
The scrambling, the creativity that Jordan Spieth has at age 21 is absolutely remarkable. Is that perhaps his hallmark at this point in his young career?
Well, like I said, his hallmark is the ability to score. There was a critical juncture in the U.S. Open, and everyone will point to his birdie at 16, or maybe the wonderful 3-wood he hit into the 18th hole. But I think he won the U.S. Open going back to the 15th hole. It was a par 3. He hit a beautiful shot in just to the right of the flagstick. Then the ball took the turns of the green and rolled all the way down to the front and off. And I had in my notes his scrambling on the PGA Tour. He was 8th best this year in scrambling, getting up and down after missing greens on the PGA Tour. And sure enough, just a really, really difficult up and down. I was able to make a 5-foot putt, which kept him in the lead. And then on the very next shot, Brandon Grace hits it out of bounds, and Jordan makes a birdie, and then, you know, all the strange things that happened on the way to the house. But I really thought the turning point of Jordan winning the U.S. Open was him making a 3 on the 15th hole.
Was Chambers Bay that bad of a golf course?
No, it's a good golf course. It's a much better golf course than Whistling Straits. It's a better golf course than a lot of places that major championships are held at. It's much better than Kiowa. It's a very good golf course that had bumpy greens. Very few players complained about the layout, complained about the golf course itself. Everyone was critical of the greens, which had some poa annua in them, and poa annua grows much more rapidly than the other grasses, and so you get little speed bumps, and that's what players complain about. It's a wonderful golf course, Chambers Bay is, and some of the greens were beautiful. The 7th green was all pure fescue. You couldn't tell the transition from fairway to putting surface. It was wonderful, but the closer you got down to Puget Sound, the water, the more poa annua you found in greens. And by the way, I talked with Ryder Trent Jones Jr., who designed the golf course. He said that a new chemical has been approved for treating poa annua. And he says in a year's time, if you don't want poa annua on the golf course, you won't have poa annua. Not just at Chambers Bay, but there's tons of golf courses in the Dallas Metroplex that fight poa annua. There's lots of West Coast courses that have pure poa annua greens. So maybe agronomy is always changing, but Chambers Bay is a really, really good golf course that had some bumpy greens.
It was interesting. I know the greens were kind of the thing that a lot of golfers complained about, and I think some others were complaining about various other things. But some of the scenery around was absolutely gorgeous, and you still had good golf, for much of this tournament. And so, I think I'm with you as well. The criticism may have been just a little on the extreme side, perhaps a little overblown by those who are reporting it.
Well, there's two things that players complained about. One, the bumpiness of the greens. 2, the fact that it was difficult for gallery to see the golf tournament. It was a really hilly climb, and the USGA, United States Golf Association, did bring in extra stands and advise players, instead of walking with their favorite golfers, perhaps sit and watch them come through. There were some problems with that. There was as much as a 90-minute wait to get a seat in some of the grandstands. And if you did choose to walk, it wasn't only a difficult walk, but at times hazardous, because the grass got so slick that walking up and down these 50-foot dunes, there were people that were falling and sliding, and so it became dangerous. And I think the other thing, traditionally, the 4 venues for the major championships have had very, distinctive styles. The Masters has great big wide fairways that puts a premium on your second shot, and big undulating greens. U.S. Open traditionally is tree-lined with very, very thick rough. The British Open traditionally on links land, and the PGA kind of an amalgamation of the U.S. Open and the Masters. This year, when Jordan Spieth arrived on property, he said, well, I won the Masters, and now I get to play in 3 straight British Opens, because Chambers Bay definitely had a links feel to it. The Open Championship takes place at St. Andrews, and then the PGA takes place at Whistling Straits, which definitely has a links feel to it as well. So I think that some of the players enjoyed the traditional setups that distinguish each of the 4 majors, and we just didn't get that this year.
And I think you foreshadowed my last question for you. Is Spieth the favorite at St. Andrews, given that the course layout is at least somewhat similar, given that it's a links style?
Well, he'll definitely be among the favored. Whether he is the actual odds-on, I don't know. Rory McIlroy is going to get a lot of action there. I think he finished 3rd the year that Louis Oosthuizen won. And remember, Rory actually led the tournament after the opening round, and then came apart in the second round when it was, just a really blustery day at St. Andrews. And Rory McIlroy is a much better golfer now than he was back then. I don't know, it depends on, what happens over the next few weeks. I think we'll see Jordan again at the John Deere and then take a charter flight over to St. Andrews. I would just have a sneaking suspicion as of right now that Rory McIlroy will be favored to win the British Open. But as we know, the favorite doesn't always win it. Jordan's name will certainly get a lot of play.
Fred Albers, appreciate it as always.
Thank you much. Always good talking with you, Edward.
And again, that's Fred Albers of PGAtour.com and XM Sirius Satellite Radio for his PGA Tour coverage. He was out at the U.S. Open at Chambers Bay. Some interesting insight from Fred as far as saying that the U.S. Open was more impressive as a victory than the Masters because of his ability to fight through a lot of adversity and a very difficult golf course. And we've talked about Jordan Spieth's putting abilities for some time now, given those bumpy greens, given the types of grass and all sorts of conditions that you would find at a links course. The fact he was able to get through all of that and do it at such a young age, to me, I agree with Fred. I think it is a more impressive victory than the Masters. You look ahead to St. Andrews this time, it's a similar course. I think it favors Spieth a little bit more because of how much shorter it is, but you never can count out Rory McIlroy and what he's been able to do, and he has more experience with those types of courses. And I don't like the whole idea that there's a rivalry between Spieth and McIlroy, because I don't think there is such a thing in golf, with the possible exception of Palmer and Nicklaus. But that being said, it may very well come down to those two. There may be some random third guy who comes in there and makes things interesting. But I think what's fascinating is that golf is very much in young hands, and Spieth is very much a part of it.
Well, going back to your point about the quote-unquote manufactured rivalry between Spieth and McIlroy, it's natural to look at right now because they're number one and number two, but we haven't seen them in big-time situations going head-to-head before. But, let's just say in the British Open going into Sunday, we do see that. Can you imagine the ratings? Can you imagine the excitement? Can you imagine the buildup?
It's exactly what golf would want to have, and on the one hand, it is manufactured. It is something where there's not a whole lot similar as far as what they're trying to do.
Well, these are the young guns. This is the American young gun. This is the European young gun. They're both going to converge at a certain point. They both have great personalities.
It's an individual Ryder Cup of sorts.
It's amazing. No, yeah. It's just to be gifted with these two singularly talented individuals, but in their own different ways. They win in different ways. McIlroy is a really, really long hitter. Spieth, the most amazing thing to me about Spieth, after during the U.S. Open on 17, after dropping those two shots, he could have easily caved, he could have easily tanked going into 18, but to go in there and then hit the approach in like that to set up the birdie, just his mental, cerebral, just how it works up there in his head. It's just what really, really, really impresses me the most about Spieth.
And you go back to Dustin Johnson just as a moment of comparison. He's a pretty darn good golfer in his own right.
No, he's amazing.
He's a fantastic golfer. And the fact that, I think one of the reasons why he three-putted on 18 was because he didn't get exactly what he wanted on that eagle putt. He had to fight through a lot more stuff than Spieth did in that final round. And I think eventually it caught up to him. Whereas Spieth is able to brush it off at a very young age. It's incredible what he's able to do in that regard.
How many times in your life do you have a look at eagle to win the U.S. Open at 12 feet, and then you end up three-putting that? You feel so awful for him. But
you absolutely do.
But Spieth set himself up to be in that situation to begin with, and so you can't take any credit away from Spieth for just really fighting back after that disaster on 17.
Spieth was a lot likelier to three-putt given what he was looking at on 18, and instead he pretty much did the conservative approach.
On to the next hole.
Yeah, and somehow took care of it. And, you can nitpick a lot of, what Dustin Johnson did or didn't do, and you can also, slightly criticize, I suppose, the fact that Jordan Spieth is not someone who drives the ball super far. He's not physically intimidating. He's not any of those things. But his creativity may be the best on tour right now. His putting statistically certainly is. And I think those are going to be some huge assets coming up in the British Open. And I am probably more comfortable with his chances for this upcoming major than I am for the first two. Now, I thought in the Masters there was a very good chance for him to win this one. But for some reason, given what he was able to do at the U.S. Open, the momentum that he has at that point, and even when he has his little dips, he's able to come out of them so quickly. I mean, it was not a great Nelson performance that he was able to shake off, get going, and then he came out, guns a-blazing. And he has a very intelligent approach to a major championship, how he plans for things, how he, does his research, how he studies. He plays certain tournaments, not in others. I mean, Tiger definitely set himself up to win majors. Spieth probably does a little bit more as far as winning more as well as the major championships, but he takes those things very seriously, and I think that's another underrated portion of his game, is the intelligence.
What benefits Spieth right now is the fact that he won those 2 majors in 2 completely different ways. He ran away with the Masters. He had to grind and scratch and claw his way to win the U.S. Open, and so he's been under both scenarios now. And so now he can go into the British Open with both scenarios in his head, and, it's just, he can handle any situation.
And it's interesting, too, because there are not a lot of golfers who can do both things. I know it sounds, a little trite or perhaps a little simplistic to say that, one has momentum and the other doesn't. I mean, it's not that simple. But it's interesting that either a golfer has to win by a ton to win a significant tournament, or they can only win with the pressure of having someone behind them, or else, something happens and then they completely fall apart.
There's so many variables that come into play, but you will do yourself a disservice if you discounted Spieth's chances at any point. Right now, he finds ways to do it. He finds ways to win.
And the run that we're seeing right now is not just rare, but perhaps unlike anything we've ever seen in golf right now. I mean, you've seen the list for, what he's been able to do winning those first 2 majors this year, how few other golfers have done that, and then you look at the list. My goodness, that's impressive. And then you look at his age, you look at the other wins that he has on tour, throughout his career, what he was able to do before he became a professional.
Yeah, the big thing is when you look at, he's ours. He's our kid. He's the kid that we've covered for so many years. He's the kid that we've seen grind through high school junior tournaments, grind through, the NCAA tournament, winning a national championship for Texas, and now he's doing it on the biggest possible stage. And it's just cool to see. It really is.
There are some polls out there that say Jordan Spieth is a better role model for golf than Rory McIlroy, Tiger Woods, or any of that, and I tend to agree at this point. I mean, given that he's the youngest of that trio, given that he's won on the biggest stage as often as they did or more by his age, and given the classiness that he exudes every single time he's out there on the golf course. I mean, you saw the photo of him taking a picture with a volunteer at the U.S. Open with the trophy just to, give back, as it were. And I think those are the things that you can be most proud of as a local Dallas golf fan, of how he's carried himself as well as his significant accomplishments.
Yeah, to rehash a tired Jason Garrett phrase, he does things the right way, both on the course and the way he treats fans, just every step of the way. He just hasn't had a misstep.
We will talk more about Jordan Spieth's chances at the British Open when we get closer to that time. That will be happening in about 3.5 weeks or so. Until then, we'll wrap this episode up for Fox 4 Sports Watch. For Victor, I am Edward. Take care, everyone.
On air, online, and totally mobile, this is Fox 4.